at this point, we're going to show you how to remove the pontoon, which is the gray part, from the Solar Breeze. You'll need to do that if you're going to replace a motor or a gear platform. Those are the most common things that you might have to do repair on the Solar Breeze. So you turn the unit upside down, remove the chlorine tray, just set it aside for now, and then remove the debris tray as well. And you'll notice that there are 5 screw holes embedded in each pontoon, and then 5 more on each side with tabs with screws. So that's a total of 20 screws that are all going to need to come out. You need a number 10 Torx screwdriver, of course, with an extension that's long enough to reach into those areas where the screw bosses are. Once again, I'm using an electric drill just because it makes life a little bit easier. You may find if you're using an electric drill, you actually want to drop it in and make sure the screwdriver is engaged with the screw head. Then drop your screw back in and just loosen those off. And for the screws that are actually embedded inside the pontoon like this, when I remove a pontoon, or when we remove a pontoon, we'll normally just leave those in. We don't actually worry about taking them off, and we'll show you why when we go to replace the pontoon. So once again, these ones come out. Set them down before I drop them. There we go. So everything on this side has been loosened or removed, and we'll do the same thing on the other side. So once again, kind of drop it in, make sure your your screwdriver is engaged with the head. Just loosen that off. Do the same thing with all of the screws in the embedded screw bosses here, and then just remove these 5 on this side here also. There you go. So now you've got all of the screws loosened and removed. It should just come off like that. So away you go. So when you have removed the pontoon, just set it aside like this. And once again, I don't worry about removing these screws because they actually are helpful as guides for when we go to put the pontoon back on. So we just set that aside for now. And you notice once you open it up, then you can see all of the rest of the componentry of the Solar Breeze. The gear platforms and the front motor, the rear motor platform and motor, and also on this side, and you can see all of the wiring to the solar panel if necessary as well. So one of the things you want to do when you go to replace it is make sure that these axles for the rear bumper wheels are set on the screw bosses there. So when you go to move them or wiggle them, they should be well set, and the same over here. So those axles are set. Take your unit, jiggle it a little bit so all the screws are down, and then I like to take and simply make sure that these rear axle screws line up with the rear axles. Drop that in place, and then do the same with the front. Make sure that the front axle screws line up with the front axles. Drop that in place. And then I actually leave the axles till last to tighten up, because I know they're in place where they're supposed to be. So we tighten up the center 3 screws on this side. And then I'll do the rear, and then the front. And then turn it around here, and we'll do the same thing. We know that these axles are lined up, so I like to do the center screws here first. Tighten those up. I like to do the rear. And the front, away we go. So we've got the outside screws all in place. And now you'll notice that the front screws and rear screws for the inside are actually a little bit shorter. So you'll see that you have two different types of screws, a 20 millimeter screw, and I think that's a 14 millimeter screw. So the shorter screws go in the two front tab locations and the two rear tab locations. So let's put those in first. There are times in life when I wish I had smaller fingers. And then we'll do the remainder of the screws. And we'll shift it around. And there you have it. Now you've removed and replaced the pontoon. Turn the unit on. Make sure the paddle wheels are operating freely so that there's no binding or anything like that from the process. Everything seems to be working fine, so we're all good. Find the debris tray and chlorine tray that you removed. So with the chlorine tray, you'll notice that there's a handle area here. It goes towards the outside, and you just set it there so that the guide rails with the chlorine tray slide inside the guides here. And just slide it in like that. And then the same thing with the debris tray. You'll notice there's guide rails here that slide inside this area here. So just slide it in, make sure those are lined up. Press it in. Make sure it's pressed all the way to the back, because if you don't press the debris tray all the way to the back, you could have debris that actually escapes as it's coming through. And it's all ready to go. Flip it back over, set it in your pool, and enjoy your nice clean pool.